Hello, believers, non-believers, and everyone in between. You're listening to Stories with Sapphire. I am Sapphire Sandalo. Now get cozy and open your mind because it's story time. Happy Thursday, everyone. Welcome to the Vibe Stream. Let me know if you can hear me okay. I usually don't clip the mic to me because it's not... Can you hear me? It says the thing is going to yellow, so I'm assuming so. Hello. Happy Thursday. Happy Vibe Stream. This is the live stream I do every Thursday at 4 p.m. Pacific, where I read you stories set to chill lo-fi music that my husband wrote. If you like it, let him know in the comments. So can you believe it? We have actually made our way through the first book. It was a lot worse than I remember. I remember being a child and just being absolutely terrified, and now reading it, I'm like, huh? All right. So now we're moving on to the sequel. We've got more scary stories to tell in the dark. So before we begin, let me say hi to everyone in the chat. Hello, Denise Vasquez, Mars Santos, Max Billion, Lindsay, Brandon Riley, Weekly Creep, O Divine Beast V, Linnea Jones, Listen to Distractable, Three Souls Paranormal, Riley Slaya, Drew C. Welcome. And thank you for being here. All right, let's get into it. Also, just a reminder, a new podcast episode went up yesterday. So if you haven't listened to it, check it out. It's a good one. I open it with something really cool that happened to me that I believe was contact with my Lola, my great grandma. All right, here's a photo. You know, I like doing these. It makes me feel like I'm doing story time at a library. Okay, so this one's called Something Was Wrong. One morning, John Sullivan found himself walking along a street downtown. He could not explain what he was doing there, or how he got there, or where he had been earlier. He didn't even know what time it was. He saw a woman walking toward him and stopped her. "I'm afraid I forgot my watch," he said and smiled. "Can you tell me the time?" When she saw him, she screamed and ran. Then John Sullivan noticed that other people were afraid of him, too. When they saw him coming, they flattened themselves against a building or ran across the street to stay out of his way. "There must be something wrong with me," John Sullivan thought. "I'd better go home." He hailed a taxi, but the driver took one look at him and sped away. John Sullivan did not understand what was going on, and it scared him. "Maybe somebody at home can come and get me," he thought. He found a telephone and called his wife, but a voice he did not recognize answered. "Is Mrs. Sullivan there?" he asked. "No, she's at a funeral," the voice said. "Mr. Sullivan was killed yesterday in an accident downtown." Oh, what a twist. We all saw that coming, didn't we? All right. Here we go. This one is called The Wreck. Fred and Jean went to the same high school, but they met for the first time at the Christmas dance. Fred had come by himself, and so had Jean. Soon, Fred decided that Jean was one of the nicest girls he had ever met. They danced together most of the evening. At 11 o'clock, Jean said, "I have to leave now. Can you give me a ride?" "Sure," he said. "I've got to go home too." "I accidentally drove my car into a tree on my way over here," Jean said. "I guess I wasn't paying attention." Yeah, no shit. Fred drove her to the head of Brady Road. It was in a neighborhood he didn't know very well. "Why don't you drop me off here?" Jean said. "The road up ahead is in really bad condition. I can walk from here." Fred stopped the car and held out some tinsel. "Have some," he said. "I got it at the dance." "Thank you," she said. "I'll put it in my hair." And she did. "Would you like to go out sometime? To a movie or something?" Fred asked. "That would be fun," Jean said. After Fred drove off, he realized that he did not know Jean's last name or her telephone number. "I'll go back," he thought. "The road can't be that bad." He drove slowly down Brady Road through a thick woods, but there wasn't a sign of Jean. As he came around a curve, he saw the wreckage of a car ahead. It had crashed into a tree and had caught fire. Smoke was still rising from it. As Fred made his way to the car, he could see someone trapped inside, crushed against the steering column. It was Jean. In her hair was the Christmas tinsel he had given her. I would have probably done a few more passes on that story if it were if it were me. I mean, yeah, that's a very classic, like, are all of these stories about people who didn't realize they were dead? All right, here we go. This one's called One Sunday Morning. Ida always went to the 7 o'clock Sunday morning service at her church. Usually she heard the clanging of the church bells while she was eating breakfast, but this morning she heard them while she was still in bed. "That means I'm late," she thought. Ida jumped out of bed, quickly dressed, and left without eating or looking at the clock. It was still dark outside, but it usually was dark at this time of year. Ida was the only one on the street. The only sounds she heard were the clatter of her shoes on the pavement. Everybody must already be in church, she thought. Ida took a shortcut through the cemetery. Then she quietly slipped into the church and found a seat. The service had already begun. When she caught her breath, Ida looked around. The church was filled with people she had never seen before, but the woman next to her did look familiar. Ida smiled at her. "It's Josephine Kerr," she thought. "But she's dead. She died a month ago." Suddenly, Ida felt uneasy. She looked around again. As her eyes began to adjust to the dim light, Ida saw some skeletons in suits and dresses. "This is a service for the dead," Ida thought. "Everybody here is dead, except me." Ida noticed that some of them were staring at her. They looked angry, as if she had no business there. Josephine Kerr leaned toward her and whispered, "Leave right after the benediction, if you care for your life." When the service came to an end, the minister gave his blessing. "The Lord bless you and keep you," he said. "The Lord make his face to shine upon you." Ida grabbed her coat and walked quickly toward the door. When she heard footsteps behind her, she glanced back. Several of the dead were coming toward her. Others were getting up to join them. "The Lord lift up his countenance to you," the minister went on. Ida was so frightened she began to run. Out the door she ran, with a pack of shrieking ghosts at her heels. "Get out!" one of them screamed. Another shouted, "You don't belong here!" and ripped her coat away. As Ida ran through the cemetery, a third grabbed the hat from her head. "Don't come back!" it screamed and shook its arm at her. By the time Ida reached the street, the sun was rising and the dead had disappeared. "Did this really happen?" Ida asked herself. "Or have I been dreaming?" That afternoon, one of Ida's friends brought over her coat and hat, or what was left of them. They had been found in the cemetery, torn to shreds. Oh, divine beast, I'm scared of randomly repeating the same day over and over, not realizing I'm dead. Here's the thing, though. That is a genuine fear, but at the same time, I feel like you wouldn't even be. You're saying not realizing you're dead. If you don't realize it, then would you really be afraid? I feel like it's more terrifying to know that you're repeating the same day over and over again. But if you have no consciousness of it, then it's not as scary. I don't know. That's what I think. What's another question? V, I just saw the melting clock in your background. Where did you get it from? Aha. It used to be functioning. I'm so sad it broke. This is a melting clock. I believe I got it from Urban Outfitters years ago. I don't know if it still exists, but you might be able to buy them from somewhere else. I think if you search Google melting clock, Dolly melting clock, I think you'll be able to find one. But yeah, I love it. It's so cool. Can you guys hear the dogs barking outside? Okay, y'all ready for this? Okay. Oh no, I have a burp. Woo! All right, here we go. This one's called Sounds. The house was near the beach. It was a big old place where nobody had lived for years. From time to time, somebody would force open a window or a door and spend the night there, but never longer. 3 fishermen caught in a storm took shelter there one night. With some dry wood they found inside, they made a fire in the fireplace. They lay down on the floor and tried to get some sleep, but none of them slept that night. First, they heard footsteps upstairs. It sounded like there were several people moving back and forth, when one of the fishermen called, "Who's up there?" The footsteps stopped. Then they heard a woman scream. The scream turned into a groan and died away. Blood began to drip from the ceiling into the room where the fishermen huddled. A small red pool formed on the floor and soaked into the wood. A door upstairs crashed shut, and again the woman screamed. "Not me!" she cried. It sounded as if she was running, her high heels tapping wildly down the hall. "I'll get you!" a man shouted, and the floor shook as he chased her. Then, silence. There wasn't a sound, until the man who had shouted began to laugh. Long peals of horrible laughter filled the house. It went on until the fishermen thought they would go mad. When finally it stopped, the fishermen heard someone coming down the stairs, dragging something heavy that bumped on each step. They heard him drag it through the front hall and out the front door. The door opened, then it slammed shut. Again, silence. Suddenly, a flash of lightning filled the house with a green blaze of light. A ghastly face stared at the fishermen from the hallway. Then came a crash of thunder. Terrified, they ran out into the store. What? Okay, I think I got a little lost in that one. Oh, it was just they chased him out of the house. Okay. Well, here's something kind of cool. When I was out filming something, I guess I can't be specific on what it was, but you can probably guess what it was. I was filming something, and there was a part where I had to be in a basement in this abandoned warehouse by myself, me and a camera guy, and everyone else left the building to make sure that like no one made sounds, and I thought it was their sounds. And I kid you effing not, it was like a big building, but like at the far end of the building, I heard footsteps. Whose footsteps were those? I don't know. Isn't that crazy? That's crazy. That's never happened to me in my life. But they were clear foot. It was like a like close to me, and then it walked away. Wild, right? I don't know. I thought it was cool. It's pretty creepy. Okay, here we go. This one's called A Weird Blue Light. What a title. What do you think this is about? No idea. Late one night in October 1864, a Confederate blockade runner slipped by some Union gunboats at the entrance to Galveston Bay in Texas and made it safely to port with its cargo of food and other necessities. Lewis Billings, the master of the small vessel, was getting ready to weigh anchor when he was startled by a shriek from one of the crew. "A strange, old-fashioned schooner with a big black flag was rushing down at us," Billings said later. She was afire with some sort of weird pale blue light that lit up every nook and cranny of her. The crew was pulling at the ropes and doing other work, and they paid us no attention, didn't even glance our way. They all had ghastly, bleeding wounds, but their faces and eyes were those of dead men. The man who had shrieked had fallen to his knees, his teeth chattering as he gasped out a prayer. Overcoming my own terror, that was chilling the very marrow of my bones, I rushed forward, shouting to the others as I ran. Suddenly, the schooner vanished before my eyes. Some say that it was the ghost of John Lafitte's pirate ship Pride that sank off Galveston Island in 1821 or 1822. She was seen again in 1892 in the same waters with the same crew. It's a very short one. Lindsay asks, okay, question. Did you watch the Cabinet of Curiosities show on Netflix that came out this Halloween? I loved it. It felt very scary stories to tell in the dark in a Hitchcock sort of way. I watched the first episode and I thought it was pretty cool, but just have not had a chance to watch the rest. But if you like it, I will check it out. I did like it. It was cool. I mean, no one does creature horror like Guillermo del Toro. His world building, creature building is always just top notch. All right, y'all. Ooh, we got a long boy here. Okay, this one's called "Somebody Fell from Aloft." This is another ship one. Okay, here we go. I had signed on as an ordinary seaman on the Falls of Ettrick, a merchant ship bound for England. The first time I saw that ship, I knew her right away. She was the old Gertrude Spurshoe. I had sailed on her years before when she was painted brown and gold. Now she was painted black and had a new name, but it was the same ship for sure. We had a pretty good crew for that voyage, except for one hard-looking ticket named McLaren. He was a pretty good seaman, but there was something about him that I didn't trust. He was kind of secretive, kept mostly to himself. One day, somebody told him that I had worked on the old Gertrude. For some reason, he got all a tremble over that. Then I catched him giving me all of these ugly black looks, as if he was itching to knife me in the back. I guessed it had something to do with the Gertrude, but I didn't know what. Well, this one day, we was trying to work our way through a dripping black fog. You'd scarcely know we had all the lights on, and it was dead calm. There wasn't a breath of fresh air. The ship just lay there, wallowing in a trough, a-rolling and a-rolling, going nowhere. I was standing my watch around midships, and McLaren was doing his trick at the wheel. The rest of the crew was scattered around one place and another. It was as quiet as could be. Then, all at once, whacko! This thing hits the deck right in front of McLaren. He lets go a screech that turns my blood cold, and he falls down in a faint. The second mate starts yelling that somebody has fallen from aloft. Laying out there just forward of the wheel was someone, or something, dressed in oilskins with blood oozing out from underneath. The captain ran and fetched a big light from his cabin so we could see who it was. They kind of straightened him out to get a good look at his face. He was a big, ugly-looking devil, but nobody knew who he was or what he was doing up there. At least nobody was saying. I didn't realize this guy had an accent until halfway. When McLaren came to from his faint, they tried to get something out of him. All he did was jabber away and keep rolling those big, wild-looking eyes of his. Everybody was getting more and more excited. We all wanted to heave the body overboard as quick as we could. There was something weird about it, as if it wasn't real. But the captain wasn't so sure about getting rid of it that way. Could it be a stowaway? He asked. But the ship was so filled with lumber we were carrying, there was no space where a living thing could hide for 3 weeks, which is how long we had been out. Even if it was a stowaway, what was it doing aloft on such a dirty day? There was no reason for anyone to be up there. There was nothing to see. Finally, the captain gave up and told us to heave him overboard. Then, nobody would touch him. The mate ordered us to pick him up, but nobody made a move. Then he tried coaxing, but that didn't do any good. Suddenly, that loony McLaren starts yelling, "I handled him once and I can handle him again." He picks up the body and staggers over to the railing with it. He is just about to throw it overboard when it wraps its two big, long arms around him, and over they go, together. Then, on the way down, one of them starts laughing in a horrible way. The mates are yelling to launch a boat, but nobody would get into a boat, not on a night like that. We threw a couple of life preservers after them, but everybody knew they wouldn't help. So that was that. Or was it? The first chance I had to go home after that, I went right over to see old Captain Spurshoe, who was captain when the Gertrude was around. Well, he says, one trip these two outlandish men shipped aboard the Gertrude. One was McLaren, the other was a really big fella. The big one was always picking on McLaren and thumping him around, and McLaren was always talking about how he would get back at him. Well, this wet, dirty night, the two of them was up there alone, and the big one come flying down, killed himself deader than a herring. McLaren says the foot rope they were using parted and how he almost fell himself. But everybody who saw that rope knew she didn't give away on her own. She had been cut through with a knife. After that, whenever we came into port, McLaren thought we were going to get the police after them, and he'd get pretty scared. But we couldn't prove anything, so we didn't try. In the end, I guess the big fella took care of things in his own way. If he was a ghost that came back, that's what he was. If there be things like ghosts. Okay. Mars Santos, hi Queen. You should tell a story in Philippines about a baby replaced by a swan with a fake sick baby. It was televised with video. They throw the baby in the window and disappeared. What? You know, like a changeling? Lindsay, dude, the show was amazing. It was great at making you feel uncomfortable. The ending episode totally made me cry. Thought it was so sweet. Okay, yeah. I love a crying horror. Oh Divine Beast, I think there's a haunted ship somewhere near where I live. I work across the street of a supposed haunted lighthouse. I want to visit one day. Yeah, ships are creepy. I don't know if any of you have been to the Queen Mary. That's the most recent ship that I can think of. I did an investigation there, and that was pretty cool. But for me, the reason why ships are so creepy is not only like the claustrophobia, because you know that you are in an enclosed space, but also just all the sound is constantly echoing because of all the metal and the metal walls, and it just makes this like eerie atmosphere, just like all that vibration. It just doesn't sound natural, you know. I don't know. That's why ships are creepy to me. All right, we got time for one more. Let's do this. This one's called The Little Black Dog. Will this one be cute? Okay. It's not going to be cute. Here we go. Billy Mansfield said that a little black dog followed him wherever he went, but he was the only one who saw it. So people thought he was kind of crazy. To drive the dog away, Billy was always hollering at it, throwing rocks at it, but the dog always came back. The first time Billy saw that dog was the day he fought Silas Burton. Billy was just a young man then, but the Burtons and Billy's family had been feuding for years. When Billy saw Silas riding toward him, he went for his gun and Burton went for his. But Billy fired first. He hit Burton in the back, knocking him from his horse. Burton's horse ran off and his gun fell where he couldn't reach it. He lay there on the ground, pleading with Billy not to kill him. But Billy killed him anyway. Burton's little black dog was with him when he was shot. The dog kept licking Burton's face and barking and snarling at Billy. In his anger, Billy killed the dog too. There wasn't much law enforcement in those days, so Billy wasn't arrested. But all that night he heard Burton's dog outside his cabin, scratching on his door and barking to be let in. I'm imagining this, Billy said to himself. I shot that dog. It's dead. But the next morning, Billy saw the dog. It was waiting for him outside. From then on, there was not a day when he didn't see it. And there wasn't a night when he didn't hear it scratching on his door, barking to be let in. From then on, Billy was always finding black dog hairs on the sofa, on the floor, in his bed, even in his food. And the house and the yard stank of dog. That's what Billy said. Whenever somebody told him there wasn't any dog to see, he'd say, "Maybe you don't see it, but I do. And I'm not crazier than you are." Things went on like that for many years. Then one morning, in the middle of winter, the neighbors didn't see any smoke coming out of Billy's chimney. When they went over to check, Billy wasn't there. A day or so later, they found his body lying in the snow in a field in the back of his cabin. Billy had plenty of enemies, and at first it seemed like somebody might have killed him, but there wasn't a mark on his body, and there weren't any footprints out there, except for Billy's. The doctor said Billy probably died of old age, but there was something odd about his death. When the neighbors found Billy, there were black dog hairs on his clothes. There were even a few on his face. It smelled like a dog had been out there, yet no one had seen a dog anywhere. Well, looks like this little black dog got some revenge. Alright. Well, that's the end of our vibe stream. I hope you all have a great rest of your Thursday. Thanks for sticking around to the end. I'll see you soon.